The War of the Last Alliance is over. The Dark Lord Sauron has been vanquished, and peace has returned to Middle-earth. Yet peace is fleeting, for darkness lingers in the shadows, and new powers are destined to rise. Welcome to the Third Age, an era of both splendor and decay. As great kingdoms are forged, others crumble into dust. It is a time of heroes and villains, of light and shadow. It is here, at the dawn of this new age, that our story begins. With the fall of Sauron in the War of the Last Alliance, and the destruction of much of Middle-earth in the Second Age, a new chapter began. The Third Age would see the rise and fall of kingdoms, the slow fading of the Elves, and the mysterious emergence of the Hobbits. Yet, despite the initial peace, dark forces lingered, waiting to re-emerge and shape the fate of Middle-earth. The Third Age officially began in the year 1, following the defeat of Sauron. The kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor were established by Isildur and Anarion, sons of Elendil. Gondor, with its capital in Minas Tirith, became the central power in the south, while Arnor, to the north, was led by Isildur from the city of Annúminas. The heirs of Númenor had successfully carved new kingdoms from the remnants of the Second Age. However, the peace was not destined to last. By the 9th century of the Third Age, the kingdom of Arnor had fallen into internal conflict. The realm was divided into 3 smaller kingdoms, Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudor, each vying for dominance. This fragmentation left the northern realm vulnerable to external threats. Rudor, in particular, fell under the influence of Angmar early on and betrayed the other 2 kingdoms. Arthedain, led by its king Arvedui, held out the longest, but it too would eventually fall to the Witch King's forces. It was during this period that a new menace began to rise in the north, the Witch King of Angmar. As the chief of the Nazgul, he established the kingdom of Angmar and launched a campaign of destruction against the northern Dunedain. The Angmar War, which began in 1300, lasted for centuries. The Witch King's forces devastated the lands of Arnor, and by the year 1974, the last kingdom of Arthedain had fallen. King Arvedui, the last king of Arthedain, fled north to the ice bays of Foroshel, where he ultimately perished, marking the end of the line of the kings of Arnor. In this final hour, a combined force of elves from Rivendell and Lindon, under the leadership of Glorfindel and Círdan, joined with Gondor's armies in a desperate assault on Angmar. Although the Witch King's armies were defeated, he managed to escape, returning to Mordor to plot his revenge. While the north crumbled, Gondor remained strong in the south. Gondor's strategic position and great cities, such as Minas Tirith and Osgiliath, allowed it to maintain stability even in troubled times. However, Gondor also faced its own trials. Attacks from the Easterlings and Haradrim tested its strength as these foes sought to exploit the kingdom's vulnerability. Despite these conflicts, Gondor experienced a fairly long period of relative peace known as the Watchful Peace from the year 2063 to 2460. During this time, Sauron had withdrawn into the shadows, and no major wars plagued Middle-earth. This was also the time when the Hobbits first appeared on the historical stage, The year 1601 marked a significant moment in Hobbit history. The founding of the Shire. Granted permission by the northern Dunedain, the Hobbits settled in the fertile lands of Eriador. The Shire would become a peaceful and secluded region, largely isolated from the great conflicts of Middle-earth. The Hobbits, once nomadic, now found a home, unaware of the great dangers lurking beyond their borders. However, the peace of the Hobbits was occasionally disturbed. During the early centuries of the Shire's existence, wolves and goblins attempted to invade their lands. These conflicts, such as the Battle of Greenfields in 2747, tested the resilience of the Hobbits. Yet they were able to preserve their way of life. By the time of the events leading up to The Hobbit, the Shire had remained relatively untouched by the greater wars in the world. As the centuries passed, the Shire remained mostly isolated, while events beyond its borders grew increasingly dire. The northern kingdom of Arnor had fully collapsed, leaving behind only the rangers of the north, who guarded the remnants of their once great kingdom. Meanwhile, Gondor continued to face pressure from outside forces and internal strife. As the early Third Age progressed, the stage was set for the growing influence of Sauron. The year 2510 marked a turning point in the Third Age. Gondor, once mighty, now faced relentless attacks from the Easterlings, specifically the Balchoth. These savage enemies invaded Gondor's northern province of Calenardon, overwhelming its defenses. Gondor's forces were on the brink of defeat, but salvation came in the form of a cavalry led by Eorl the Young, a chieftain of the northern Eotheod. Responding to Gondor's call for aid, Eorl and his horsemen charged into battle, driving the Balchoth back and saving Gondor from destruction. In gratitude, Gondor gifted the lands of Calenardon to Eorl and his people. This region would become known as Rohan, and its people, the Rohirrim, would grow into a powerful ally of Gondor. The alliance between Gondor and Rohan, known as the Oath of Eorl, was forged in battle and would play a pivotal role in the future of Middle-earth. However, even as Rohan rose in power, Gondor itself continued to face both internal and external pressures. As Rohan flourished, Gondor found itself in decline. The kingdom suffered repeated assaults, including the fall of Minas Ithil to Sauron's forces. The once proud city became known as Minas Morgul, a bastion for the Nazgul, Sauron's most feared servants. The city of Osgiliath, Gondor's ancient capital, also fell into ruin as civil strife and outside invasions took their toll. By the year 2050, the last king of Gondor, Arnor, disappeared after accepting a challenge to single combat from the Witch King of Angmar. With his disappearance, the line of kings was broken, and Gondor came under the rule of the stewards. For over 1,000 years, Gondor's stewards maintained the kingdom, but its strength steadily waned. Sauron's influence, though still subtle, grew, and his servants, the Nazgul, became ever more active. Meanwhile, in the hidden valley of Rivendell, the Elves continued to watch over Middle-earth, aware of the growing shadows. During this time, the White Council, a group of powerful beings led by Saruman, Gandalf, and Galadriel, began to meet, discussing the threat of Sauron and the mysterious power emanating from Dol Guldur in Mirkwood. Saruman's growing obsession with the One Ring was kept secret, but it influenced his decisions in the council. In the year 2941, the White Council finally acted, launching an assault on Dol Guldur to drive out Sauron, who had secretly returned to Middle-earth in the guise of the Necromancer. This assault marked a key turning point, as Sauron was forced to flee from Mirkwood and return to his fortress in Mordor. However, while this victory was celebrated, the threat of Sauron had not been fully vanquished. He would regroup, biding his time to reclaim the One Ring and reassert his dominion over Middle-earth. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of Middle-earth, the Shire remained peaceful and untouched, far from the troubles brewing in the wider world. Yet this tranquil region would soon play a pivotal role in the fate of Middle-earth. The White Council had acted, and the forces of the Dark Lord had been driven back, for now. But the final struggle, the War of the Ring, was fast approaching. And so, the stage is set for the final years of the Third Age. The courage of hobbits, the strength of men, and the wisdom of elves will be tested like never before. The War of the Ring ensues, and the fate of Middle-earth is decided in one final, desperate struggle.